You're listening to Building Bold Connections, a podcast where we explore the creative ways business leaders have solved professional challenges to gain success and build net worth from their network.
We're kicking off episode 1 with Chase York, Group Sales Executive with the Atlanta Falcons. Here is episode 1 of Building Bold Connections.
Hi, welcome to Building Bold Connections. I'm Tyra Burton, a senior lecturer of marketing, and I'm here with Chase York. He's a group sales account executive with the Falcons, and we're going to have an awesome conversation today about your career and what Building Bold Connections is all about. So welcome, Chase.
Thank you, Tyra. Pleasure to be here. Very excited for the first episode here.
I know we're gonna have a great time. But the first thing I want to know is your background includes sports, specifically lacrosse, which I think is just awesome, and studying communications and advertising in college. How did that translate into sales?
Yeah, and so I'm originally from Seattle, and so I found my way to the East Coast playing lacrosse in college. So was lucky enough to do that at the Division I level, and then decided after college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a communications major. I thought I'd be writing PR outputs for the rest of my life. Ended up taking a year off from after school, going to go play lacrosse in Australia, kind of figure out what I was doing.
Back that up. In Australia?
Yes, I lived in Perth, Australia for a year, playing semi-professional lacrosse and kind of figuring out what I was doing with my life. Finally decided it was time to come back, and being an athlete, I decided I really needed to do something that was competitive. And so that got me into sales, which, it's a team environment, but you're still at a competitive level, always competing on either the sales board, trying to find new people to, of course, sell to. But it definitely, that trajectory took me into a competitive career path.
Well, and we have a sales competition here at KSU as well.
Right.
So what are the best aspects of a career in sales for you?
Yeah, and so I never thought I'd be working behind a desk every day. I thought I was going to go be a lacrosse coach after school and be pacing a sideline all day. But the biggest thing for me is figuring out what I loved. And so I always loved football. I was terrible at it. I was a horrible football player in high school, which is funny being a lacrosse player in kind of similar sports. But I fell in love with the game, and so doing something I was passionate about. When I was in college, I did 2 internships. My first internship was as a marketing intern for a restaurant that was doing the PGA Sawgrass Tour, the Players Championship down in Jacksonville. And I ended up doing about a month or 2 of marketing internship, and it turned into becoming a line cook for the restaurant because all of the chefs quit one week. And
that seems a little different.
It was a little different, but it made me work harder. It made me understand, okay, I don't want to be here. I want to be up a little bit higher. And so eventually, through some really great connections through both lacrosse, school, and actually through the restaurant, I was able to then go on and work for the Jaguars radio station down in Jacksonville. And so it's kind of been a crazy path coming into the world of sports. But the one thing I can say about it is it's something I'm passionate about, and it's something that has really taken me all over the place.
Well, and it sounds like those internships that you got really helped you find that path to sales.
For sure. And so with the sports internship with the radio station, I was a media planner. And so I did all social media planning, and it kind of got me into the world of sports, which is a much more fast-paced environment. Things are constantly happening. There's always news breaking. You kind of stay on top of it. And so it helped me definitely become more organized as a 20-year-old student. But yeah, it definitely got me on the right path, which to then connections through the radio station actually led into my first job out of college, which was an inside sales executive for the Jaguars, which I was in for a year, and then have kind of made my way all around the NFL. I worked for the Jaguars. Then during COVID, I actually got cut from my position. They cut a lot of the sales jobs because they didn't expect to have a football season,
right?
Which means no fans, so no tickets to be sold. I then came up here to Georgia and worked out in Duluth for a professional lacrosse team, if you can believe we actually have that.
I didn't even know we had a professional lacrosse team.
It's professional indoor. It's played on a hockey rink. Not a lot of people know about it. It's super fun. Georgia Swarm, if you're ever out there.
Hey, they play where the Gladiators do.
Exactly. And then was lucky enough to get a job with the then Washington football team, now Commanders. So worked up there for a season, and then got my dream job back here in Georgia to come back and work for the Falcons. And so it's definitely been a crazy ride. The world of sports, you have to move around because there's only for me, I want to work in football. There's only 32 teams out there, and there's only 10 positions for every 32 teams in the NFL that I work in. And so it's, a very competitive field to be in. And so moving around is part of it. And so being from Seattle, I've now lived in about 7 different states chasing the dream.
Right.
And so it's been fun.
Well, and you've landed here in the wonderful city of Atlanta.
Exactly.
So when you're doing sales, what do you think are some of the most challenging aspects of a career in the sales?
Yeah. And so the very first thing I noticed was I was terrible at talking on the phone. Coming up in the age of texting, I didn't know how to talk on the phone to people. I could talk to my parents, but I couldn't hold a conversation with a stranger or somebody that I was calling up, like a prospect for a sale or something like that. And so it kind of taught me, you have to work on the things you're not good at. And so the biggest thing in sales is you have to be confident. And even if you're not confident, you have to pretend you're confident.
Yes.
Even right now, my heart is racing talking into this microphone. We're not even trying to make sales right now.
Let's be honest. Mine is too.
But it's definitely kind of taken me out of my comfort zone for sure. And I was telling you a little bit before the podcast, I actually was a theater kid growing up. And so
You would think that would pair really well.
Right. Oh, and so public speaking, it kind of helped a little bit early on. And so I had a little bit of a advantage of that coming early. But, the whole talking on the phone thing was really a big jump for me, but also just, business acumen. I was, your prototypical college jock. I'm pretty smart. I like to think so. But, getting into the business world, I didn't know what I was getting into, especially getting into the National Football League, which is one of the biggest businesses in the world. And so,
complicated business.
Very. And so it was quite a jump. It was my first team. It's a very small market team. Everybody loves the Jaguars down there. They're not very good. But it made me work harder, working for... And if you heard from my list of teams I've worked for, none of them are very good, except for the Falcons now, of course.
Of course.
So it's definitely taught me to sell in a hard environment, a place where, most teams like the Green Bay Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles, you don't have to talk to people when they come into games.
Right.
It has taught me to sell through adversity, and especially during COVID, having to call people up. We switched over from a sales mode to a customer service mode. We weren't trying to sell during COVID, and so it taught me how to be a better representative of my clients, of my prospects. We weren't calling and asking about tickets. We were calling and asking about their families. We were asking how they're doing. And so, it's kind of given me a well-rounded look at the business world.
I think that for me, cold calling would be like the thing that would scare me the most. So
it's nerve-wracking. It is. You have no clue what they're going to say on the other end of the line. You don't know if they're having a terrible day. You don't know if, they just crashed their car. You don't know if they just on the way to take their kids to school. You get a lot of fun language, a lot of people hanging up on you. But the thing that I actually took from sports and put into the business world is having a short memory. You have to be able to, learn from what happened, absorb it, and then move on. And so, I get hung up on probably 15 times a day. When I first started cold calling, it was, 99 out of every 100 calls was a hang up. And so it's gotten a lot better. But it's definitely not the most fun thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think you definitely have to have a sense of self-confidence in sales to survive that kind of reception.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So for the Falcons, what does your job as a group sales account executive entail? And are you involved in day of activities at the games?
Yes, so kind of all-encompassing job there. So I do a little bit of everything. And so my main role is I just took over our youth football program. And so I actually am in charge of all youth football on-field experiences and fundraising. And so I take a part in that. And then I have a bunch of other different theme days that I head. I just headed our Pride Day for our last game here against the Browns this past weekend, heading a yoga day for our backyard besties. We have a Home Depot backyard outside of our stadium that we do all sorts of events on. And so I kind of have my hand in a little bit of everything going on. And then on top of that, a lot of corporate groups. So like when Microsoft needs to entertain 500 employees for the year, they call me up and we set them up with some packages. But so I do work down in Mercedes-Benz Stadium every day. The revenue generation office is down inside Mercedes-Benz. Nice. And so everybody gets to work down there. It's pretty cool to, if I ever get bored, I go on a little walk and I can go down on the field and walk around and that kind of thing. And it's pretty cool. But so I'm in there 9 to 5 every day, calling up businesses mostly in the morning. That's when they're mostly responsive there for B2B calling. And then I do most of my clientele and B2C calling in the afternoon, just because most people are awake by that time. And so yeah, day to day, I'm in the stadium making about anywhere 60 to 80 calls a day, trying to get people to come out.
That's a lot of calls.
It gets easy.
So your theme days, have you guys found that really helps build brand loyalty and team excitement? Yeah,
and one of the cool things is it's really ingrained us in the community. When you think about those things, you think about ticket grab. You think of trying to get a community to come out just because you want to sell to them.
Right.
When it's the complete opposite. The cool thing that I found working for the Falcons, as opposed to the other teams I work for, the other teams I work for were great. I have nothing against them there, but the Falcons are a community-based team. They care about Atlanta. They care about the betterment of Atlanta and the different communities within it. And so it's been really cool to see the different groups coming out. And it's not just, hey, come to the game, here's your ticket. We have events for everybody. We get to meet players. We get to do all sorts of different things that are impactful. We do fundraisers for youth teams. We do fundraisers we just did a fundraiser for Pride Atlanta. And so it's connecting us. Well, yes, they're coming out to games, but it's building the fandom and the community.
Well, and I think that helps you when your team performs well as when they don't perform so well.
Exactly. The most amazing response you can have is having poor team performance and still having a community that backs you.
Absolutely. So what kind of bold or creative ideas have you executed in your career helping you make those connections?
Yeah. And so I will say the key word there is connections. And so in the sports world, the common adage is it's who you know. And it really is. I didn't really believe that going in. Everybody says, oh, it's who you know. It's who you know. It really is. And so one of the biggest things for me was, and I learned this during COVID, was you have to get connected and you have to use LinkedIn. And so I was shooting off about 60 messages a day, not to ask for jobs, not to ask for, submitting my application. It was to learn. And so I would send out, so eventually my career goal is to get into sponsorships. So I want to get into NFL corporate partnership and sponsorship. And so to better myself and kind of get myself in the right mind of that world, I was sending out 60 LinkedIn messages a day to different executives, managers, partners around the country at different sports teams and asking for 15 minutes of their time just to set up a call. And so the biggest thing you can do is learn and connect. And through those connections, you go miles. The world of sports is very, very small. Everybody knows everybody. And so if you can connect with one person, they're going to know somebody else. And that is pretty much made all the difference for me. Steve Griffin at 1010XL radio station down in Jacksonville was the first person to ever help me get a job with the Jaguars. I still look back to him and ask him for advice. Ask him to connect me with different people in his industry. And so it really is the connections you make. I wasn't the best student. Wasn't the smartest student, but I'm going to outwork you and I'm going to learn more. It might not show all the time, but it's there. And it's always going to be the sweat equity over everything else.
Well, and I think making connections with people where you're having conversations that are not about selling, it's about them telling you about what they do.
Exactly. I would be asking them, how did you get into your field to start? But then asking about, just like you asked, what were your creative ideas that set you apart from other people in your industry that got you higher up in your field? Learning the sort of things that some teams do better than others, and bringing that into my own, and kind of evolving from there. So it's definitely kind of a community grab at it.
So now that you're doing, you're still doing cold calls, how do you take somebody from a cold call to somebody who's a loyal customer?
Yeah, and so really when I first started, I thought you had to be like a used car salesman. I thought it was you throw all the tricks, you use all the lines, hey, I've only got this much time, let's see if we can get you in here before the time's up kind of thing. No, people hate
pressure.
that. Oh, people hate being pressured. And so the thing that I learned in the sales world and just in general when talking to people is you are in a conversation. It's just like we're talking now. It's not pushy. It's not salesy. I'm an event planner. I'm not a salesman. And so I wanted to have the best experience for you and your group when you come out. And so it's more listening. If I could say less words than they do on a call, I've won. And so that will get me into their heads is, oh, he cares about what I'm looking for. He knows what I'm looking for. He's actually asked me. And so if you can embrace their needs over yours, of course, every salesman wants to be higher up on the board. They want to make their numbers. But if you can make a lasting impact, you're going to have a returning client forever.
Well, and if you learn who they are,
exactly,
not just as a company, but as people,
right,
that helps you make that connection for a very long time.
Exactly.
So I would think one of the things that would be challenging for you, since you've changed locations so much, is rebuilding those connections in each city. So how have you done that?
It's been hard. It's definitely been different. And so, it's just putting yourself out there. Kind of like I said with the LinkedIn, going around a business. I love doing in-house visits, going out to people's offices. When we were in Jacksonville, I used to bring people face cakes. It's literally just a white sheet cake, like a wedding cake, and we would print our faces on them. We'd go out and take them out to offices, and people would laugh, but people would say
they would remember it.
They would remember you. And so it's things like that, getting out into the community, making connections. And so I coming back from Washington D.C. with the Commanders to back down here, I had kind of had a little base already built up from when I worked here before, but I had never broadened from there after. And so getting back in, reconnecting with those people that I already made connections with, but then using their connections as well. So all of those people who I'd made connections with the first time I was in Georgia were a lot of networking groups, a lot of social clubs, and then spreading out and spider webbing from there.
So what kind of networking groups have you found to be really successful for you?
Yeah, so Blue Collar Loves Football. And so one of my biggest prospecting events that I do is I've made a connection with Contractors, Closers, and Connections, which is a building, construction, HVAC, everything. They get together. They have a cocktail club basically each month. And it's all the major players in Atlanta who do construction and in the contracting world. And they get together and they have this big fun. They think it's more of a party, but it's supposed to be a networking event. So going to putting yourself out there, getting in person. People can talk on the phone all day, but most people won't actually go meet face to face.
Right.
And so getting to those events, getting to people's offices, getting in front of them is the best way to reestablish and make new connections, I believe.
And I think when people see you, it actually matters.
Exactly.
So do you have a particular sale that you're really proud that you landed?
Oh gosh, yes. My first ever big sale with the Jaguars was a sign printing business. It was Origin Signs. I still remember the name. It was that big for me. It was a record-setting deal in the world of inside sales for Jaguars. It was a $25,000 concert venue sale. It was 4 of our premium locations for Daly's Place Amphitheater, which is a concert venue connected to the Jaguars stadium. And he needed to entertain clients. And he was looking at 3 other venues in Jacksonville that we were competing against to get his business. Just like I just talked about, I went out to his business 3 times in the 2 weeks we were talking about. Unexpected visits mostly, saying, hey, I need to come out and see you. Let's talk about this thing. And so that was definitely a nice one for me. It took about a month to close, having to compete against these other concert venues, amphitheaters, and win over that business. And especially when he had done business with the other venues prior.
So you were new.
Exactly, trying to kind of get our way in there a little bit. But it still holds as the highest record sale in inside sales for the Jaguars. So yes, I know. But yes, that's definitely one I'm proud of. But ultimately, I still feel good about every sale I make. It could be 10 tickets. It could be 1,000 tickets. It's kind of like I said earlier, it's the rush of it. It's the competitive nature where it's not about getting somebody's credit card, but it's about getting somebody's credit card, and it feels pretty good when you put that through.
Right, and you hope that you build them where they'll keep coming back and have that experience because you're making that personal connection with them.
Exactly.
So what differences have you seen at the Falcons, and what excites you about being here in Atlanta?
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like I said earlier, the community, and then the people I work with. The Falcons are a tremendous organization. They hire great people. I'm surrounded by an amazing team. My manager, Rob Sivitz, has put together a stellar team. We actually grew earlier this year from 4 people to 10 now. And so we're a growing organization. We're a growing team. There's tickets to be sold apparently out there. And so it's been great. I love being back in Atlanta. DC was a little cold for me. I've gotten a little soft now living here in the South for so long. Coming from Seattle, I used to be a shorts and t-shirt and 40 degree weather kind of guy. And so now it gets about down to 60 and I need to throw a sweatshirt on. No, I definitely love Atlanta. I love the people here. It's a really cool city. It's pretty much the melting pot of the South. I had never lived in a big city before coming here, and people always said, oh, the traffic's terrible. There's too many people. It feels like a very small city in a very big area, which I think is the coolest part of it. So you still get your different pockets, and you can, if you want to do one thing one weekend and go do something completely different the next, there's options out there.
Yeah, I think I grew up in Atlanta, and Atlanta is a great place to grow up and live. So as we're closing out here, what are some suggestions you have for our Coles students that are working toward graduation?
Yeah, and so first thing I would say, we'll start with sports. So if you want to work in sports, there are 2 major websites you should go visit right now, and that is teamworksonline.com. That is where every major sports team, sports venue, concert venue post their job listings. And so that is teamworksonline.com. I'm not sponsored by them. But
he will accept one.
Yes, but I have gotten a job from there. And so it is the mecca of sports jobs. It is where you go to find basically everything. And then Sports Business Solutions. Those are the 2 main websites and publications that you can find sports jobs on. And then use and abuse LinkedIn. You can never, I call it pestering, but you can never pester somebody enough. I mean, you can go out there. It's literally the closest thing possible to being able to text a CEO.
No, it's true.
I mean, you can send a message to anybody, which I think is the coolest part, which you can then use to grow your network, learn more, connect more. And really just it doesn't even have to be in sports, but follow what you love. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to want to do it for a long time. And I'll tell you what, your job, you're going to be working for a while. And so if you're not happy, find something that makes you happy. Again, like I said earlier, I didn't want to be writing PR reports and PR publications for the rest of my life. And so I found something that made sense for me in a competitive environment, in an avenue that I've loved. And it's really taken me so much farther than I thought it could. And so just keep working hard, put your nose to the grindstone. It's all of the cliche things that people say. It actually works.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that you have found a way to meld your love of sports with your skills, and I think it's great. So, Chase, thanks for joining us today on Building Bold Connections.
Thank you for listening to Building Bold Connections. This has been a Coles College and Joel A. Katz Music and Entertainment Business Program production.